Rosanna ended up trying to go back home to the McCoys, and unfortunately, they disowned her, and she ended up moving in with her Aunt Betty, and ended up having their child together at Aunt Betty's house. Unfortunately, that child died very young, and she died not too long after. And
okay, there's Rosanna.
Go ahead and let it play.
Okay.
We're going to comment on the other side.
On the other side, okay.
So, but again, the McCoys turned their back on her as well during this. So it was pretty bad, and they had a lot of outstanding warrants on Johnse in Kentucky.
All right. McCoys turned their backs on Rosanna as well. Really? Let's look at the proof, Jack. McCoys turned their backs on Rosanna. I think it was Rosanna and her father. Like any father, he got upset because she went across the river with Johnse Hatfield. But the entire McCoy family turned their backs on her. He says that Rosanna went to live with her Aunt Betty. Well, Aunt Betty was a McCoy, Jack. Aunt Betty was the wife of Uriah McCoy, and Aunt Betty's the one that actually delivered Rosanna's baby at her house at Stringtown.
Stringtown, yeah. And she named her little girl after her mother and her Aunt Betty.
Which was?
Sarah Elizabeth.
Sarah Elizabeth. Sarah after her mother, and Elizabeth after Aunt Betty. Betty is short for Elizabeth, and everybody called her Aunt Betty. But Jack says that the McCoys turned their backs on her. It was sad. Nobody felt for Rosanna. And then he also made another statement I was going to comment on. But go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Just go ahead and start playing that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Which, for bootlegging and moonshining, as
thank you.
Maybe it'll come
I'm glad that was on there. He said that Johnse Hatfield, Kentucky had a lot of warrants on Johnse Hatfield. Kentucky had one warrant. There was one warrant on Johnse Hatfield when he was arrested. Not a lot of warrants. There's a difference in one and a lot. Going back to the other comment, I see something on here. It appears interviewer knows more than Jack. That's why I always ask for DNA from both sides when people stand up and say they're related to the family. That's, again, not just Hatfields, but McCoys, Hatfields and McCoys. Everybody, if you're going to comment, we should make sure that everybody's who they say they are first. But there was only one warrant for Johnse. Okay, go ahead.
in West Virginia, because you've got Kentucky issuing warrants for West Virginia residents, which at the time was illegal at the time.
That changed a little bit later on.
See how this gentleman tries to cover for Jack, because I think this gentleman knows that's not, I don't know what he's thinking, but I think he knows that that's not correct. Jack says that it was illegal for Kentucky to issue warrants for somebody in West Virginia. That can be further from the truth. Whether you're from Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, it don't matter. If somebody commits a crime in your state, that's where you would issue the warrant from, was that state. So he's referring to the 20 men, that it wasn't only a warrant, it was an indictment warrant where a grand jury had met and it heard the evidence and actually indicted. Randall McCoy didn't just go get a warrant. This was a grand jury that indicted those 20 men. I don't know what he's talking about, that it's illegal for Kentucky. It wasn't no more illegal for them to issue a warrant for a resident than it is now. If you commit a crime in Kentucky for somebody in West Virginia, if they committed a crime in Kentucky, that's where you'd issue the warrant from. You issued a warrant in a state where the crime was committed. It wasn't even illegal to serve the warrant in the other state at this time. That's what the Supreme Court case was all about.
Exactly.
It wasn't even illegal for Kentucky residents, bounty hunters, deputy sheriffs, state officials to go to one state to the other to serve that warrant, because at this time, the Supreme Court had never ruled on extradition or never ruled on the proper procedure to take a citizen from one state to another state.
Well, at that time, yeah, it was allowed
It was allowed.
because you had the bounty hunters and stuff that would.
Jack's saying it's illegal. It was not illegal. Go ahead.
Nope. Okay, here we go. Let's see what he's saying.
Though, I think.
Oh,
Go ahead, babe.
there is the Supreme Court ruling on Mr. Mahon versus the justice.
And that's when they come back and ruled that Kentucky already had custody of those 9 people. You can go ahead and keep them, but you can't no longer go over into another state without getting a extradition, going through extradition procedures, which require what's called a governor's warrant from one governor to the other, or the person actually voluntarily agrees to be extradited to that state.
Okay, let's see what the other one should be. There are the ones that was charged with willful murder.
Mm-hmm. And they were indicted, right, Sheila?
Yes.
These guys were indicted.
Yeah. And
In broad daylight with hundreds of people watching, that were there for the election day event.
Guys, Jack's talking about the election day when they got in a fight with Ellison Hatfield.
Okay.
And we're just taking clips out. We don't want to show Mr. Hatfield's entire videos. We're just showing clips that we're responding to. And you can go watch the entire, it's in the background there behind his head, his address and all that. And go watch the 3 videos for yourself. I'm sure he'd love to have the hits
Well, sure.
and views, so that's great. But there's a lot of stuff in there that
I said, however,
there's a lot of stuff in there that we didn't put. We didn't click on every little thing. It may sound like it, but there's a lot of mistakes and things that Jack says here that we didn't comment on. But first he said there was hundreds of people watching that fight that day when Ellison Hatfield was in the fight with the McCoy boys. Hundreds of people. Guys, I'm from Blackberry Creek. Lived there, grew up there all my life. Baby on up. We don't have hundreds at the election grounds at any certain one particular time in 2024, much less back in the 1800s when the population was a whole lot less. And you had to drive a buggy, horse and buggy, or ride a horse to go to vote. Hundreds. Jack said there was hundreds of witnesses there that saw what happened. Well, Jack fails to mention that the fight between Ellison Hatfield and Randall McCoy's son, Tolbert McCoy, was the cause of Ellison Hatfield. Tolbert McCoy and Bad Elias Hatfield, my great-great-uncle, Bad Elias Hatfield had been in a fight. And Tolbert had got the better of Bad Elias, and he sat back down. These guys are intoxicated, inebriated. They're drunk. That's what happens when people get drunk together. They fight. They had a little friendly fight, would have made up the next day. But what happens next is Ellison Hatfield from West Virginia, I might add. No reason to be at a Kentucky election except to persuade or influence that outcome of the election, buy votes, intimidate for votes. But Ellison Hatfield and some other West Virginia Hatfields were on scene. After Tolbert McCoy and Bad Elias got through fighting, Ellison Hatfield stands up, says, "Try that on me." You've got alcohol involved. You've got egos involved. The fight's on. Now, this time, Ellison, according to the articles, pulled his knife first. They talk about the McCoys stabbing Ellison, but they forget to mention that Ellison had pulled his knife first. But when he went to stab Tolbert, the blade of his knife closed on his hand.
Yep, right.
He dropped the knife. They went to the ground. Ellison picks up a rock. In the meantime, Tolbert had pulled his knife and he's stabbing Ellison, pocket knife, barely penetrating. He stabbed Ellison 7 to 8 times. Ellison picks up a rock, going to crush his skull. William McCoy tries to pull Ellison off. Farmer tries to pull him off. He can't. He pulls out a gun and shoots Ellison. He guts shoot him. When you gut shoot somebody, you're going to die. The poison from your guts and your intestines bleed out into your body, and you get infection and you die. He forgot to mention all that. He just said, "Oh, 3 McCoy boys jumped on him and killed Ellison, stabbed him and shot him." He also forgets to mention that one of the boys that they took prisoner that day and they took back to West Virginia had nothing to do with it. Wilm had run off. Randall Jr. run up to see what's going on. When he gets there, they grab him as the third McCoy. Innocent, 15-year-old boy. We'll discuss that.
Yep.
Sheila, got anything on my...
Nope, I was going to say that.
Was you really?
Yeah.
Guys, Sheila could tell the history is good or better than I can, but...
No, it's all good. No worries.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. No worries.
It's coming up here. It's coming.
Avalanche promised that they would face their judgment, execution, punishment, what have you, in Kentucky. So he tied them up to those pawpaw trees on the Kentucky side of the Tug River. But then they stood on the West Virginia side of the Tug River, where they had legal authority, and shot across the river. A firing squad did. Shot across the river, taking out the 3 McCoy boys in Kentucky.
Wow. So he's saying it's legal to stand on West Virginia side, shoot and kill somebody in Kentucky.
That's the whole thing Devil Anse wanted to do, is make sure he never committed a crime in West Virginia. Even Willis Wilson had told him, don't do nothing in West Virginia and they won't be able to get you. Why would he tie them up in Kentucky and then go to West Virginia across the river and shoot and blew their heads off? You got to understand, these guys were shot point blank. He blew their heads off from point blank. And Cotton Top and Alex Messer, Charlie Gillespie, all these guys gave statements to this effect. But now let's go back. In all the years that we've discussed the feud or talked about the feud, we have never once had anybody to ever tell us or mention or say anything about this right here. This is totally spoken purely in the history for the first time. You heard it there, right there. Because Jack's the only one that has ever heard this or told this story, where these guys tied somebody up on the Kentucky side and then run back across to the West Virginia side and shoot across the river so they would be in West Virginia committing a crime. Guys, I'm going to tell you something. Even people that I've disagreed with or have disagreed with me about our views on the feud and different things that's happening throughout the years, I guarantee you right now, when they heard that, they're scratching their head, because your true researchers they know that it's just spoken in the history right there. It made for a good story. It's interesting.
Fiction sells better than truth.
But well, that's not historical. That's not from somebody. And then people question why. Okay.
Ready?
Thank you, Lord. See, the old Fred got ready
Good
to come
job,
out.
baby.
I'm not going to say it.
Good job.
He says it was a legal nightmare. He says here in a minute. A legal nightmare because they didn't know where to charge. There's a West Virginia governor. That was Devil Anse's.
Well,
that's the 7th governor, not the first that he was referring to earlier. He was the 7th governor. That's Sheila and I down in Frankfort at Simon Buckner's grave. 30th governor of Kentucky, that signed the actual rewards for Devil Anse Hatfield and the Hatfield gang. Yeah.
Are not friendly states with each other. It happened on a state border. Who's responsible and where would they face their charges? Did it happen in Kentucky? Did it happen in West Virginia? Would it go by West Virginia laws? Which is a new state being set up?
Would it go by Kentucky or West Virginia laws? They was killed in Kentucky. That's the reason Devil Anse was never charged with anything in West Virginia. It was a new state, guys. West Virginia, it was a new state. Really? West Virginia was incorporated or established in 1863.
Mm-hmm.
What, Sheila? June of 1863?
I think it was June of 63, yeah.
June of 63, it was established. This is August of 1888, a newly established state. Go ahead.
And there, yeah. That's the one.
Thank you, babe. Stop right there. Look here, guys. It's September the 10th. September the 10th, 1887. I'm sorry. Yeah, 1887. Look down below September there and you'll see Buckner. Simon Buckner, the governor of Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
$500 reward for Anderson Hatfield. Now, he did this not only for Anderson Hatfield, he did this for all of those men, those 20 men that was on that indictment.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of them, $500. And that's when people started really going to take $500 was that's a lot of money nowadays. Imagine back then. Proclamation by the governor.
Crime of murder.
Crime of murder. And when he done this in September the 10th of 87, that's when he also sent a letter to West Virginia governor saying he would like to have the Hatfield gang turned over to Kentucky law enforcement for prosecution, or at least to stand trial. Let's just stand at trial and get it over one way or the other. If they're innocent, let them go back home. West Virginia governor sends John B. Floyd to see Devil Anse Hatfield. He tells them they're wanting you sent back. Something's got to be done. They want you sent back over to Kentucky. Now, this is September, October, November. Here comes December up, and that's when they decide, hey, let's kill them all. Let God sort them out. And that's when they decide to do the cabin massacre. Go ahead, babe.
So the Kentucky governor eventually, down the line of the feud, he got upset that the West Virginia governor wasn't doing anything about it. And the Kentucky governor wanted to invade West Virginia, take the Hatfields, and said, while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and take more land for Kentucky.
Hey, guys, the Civil War is over. The Civil War is over. We're a union. We're the United States. The Civil War, there's no more invading one state to another. If you believe that, I've got some oceanfront property in Arizona. Okay. Yeah, that's probably the old Fred.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's simply not true. One state can no longer take state from another when so that comment there was totally not correct. Willis Wilson, he'd said earlier on this video, or the first one, that about the governor stepping in 1863. Willis Wilson didn't take office till 1885.
Right. He
hadn't been the governor but since 1885. And of course, you've seen Simon Buckner, and you've seen Sheila and I. That's in our book of Sheila and I in Frankfurt. Go ahead, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to.
Oh, that's good. In Frankfurt, at Simon Buckner and his son's grave and different ones. Simon Buckner didn't become the governor of Kentucky till 1887, and that's when he signed the warrants. Randall McCoy had run around for 5 years trying to get something done on getting the Hatfield gang brought back to Kentucky to face charges for his children. Some people says, oh, Randall McCoy was a troublemaker. Really? Let's kill one of your children, 2 of your children. Now let's figure on 6. Kill 6 of your children. Burn your house down. Beat your wife. And you want justice for it. You're a troublemaker because you want somebody brought to justice? It had nothing to do with Kentucky and West Virginia. It had nothing to do with wanting more land.
Yeah.
It had to do with bringing fugitives who were hiding out in one state back to the original state they committed the crime in and facing charges. Go ahead, babe. Jack says Kentucky thought, let's take the Hatfields, and while we're at it, take the land.
and over the governor trying to invade and take West Virginia. There's some theories out there that is not. I don't know if there's any evidence out there of this or not. Again, not a historian. They supposedly the West Virginia governor sent led by Devil Anse to protect the West Virginia border from Kentucky invading. But Governor Buckner at the time was the governor of Kentucky, and he was aggressive in trying to invade and take West Virginia, and he used the feud as political leverage to invade.
Ah, geez. And then they hired all of these people to go after the Hatfield family.
Something. Okay. Guys, can you imagine? It's 1888. 1888, and Governor Buckner is trying to invade West Virginia to take more property. But he's going to use the Hatfield-McCoy feud as his excuse for it. Jack says that the governor of West Virginia, once again, now he said this back in 1863 whenever Devil Anse deserted. He said that the governor appointed Devil Anse as the police force on West Virginia there. And that was 1863. Now he's saying it again. This is the seventh governor. 1863 would have been the first governor. And now this is the seventh governor. He's saying that the governor appointed Devil Anse to be security for the borders in West Virginia and keep Buckner from taking more West Virginia property. Devil Anse was busy hiding in caves, running through the mountains to different people's houses, and including Godey's, including Nancy, his niece's store there at Meta. He would stay there upstairs in that bed we've got downstairs, sleep in that bed. He would travel around hiding out. But now we're trying to find this guy. They're trying to bring him in on $500 reward. And now he's going to stand on the border and protect the border and put himself up for $500 reward. Stay tuned for part 3, guys. Go ahead, babe.
Let's see what we got now.
That's probably, there you go.
It's advertising our books here.
There you go.
And Righting Wrongs.
And there you go.
And then Beaver Bay.
That's the truth. Hatfield McCoy, or FredMcCoy.com. And it may clarify some of the history. I think we're going to get to this one in segment 3.
It'll be part 3.
The Hubert Bay McCoy murder. And other than that, Sheila, what you got? I see you smiling.
Nothing.
I haven't been mean, have I?
No, you've done, actually, I'm proud of you.
I don't want to be mean, guys. I don't want to, I have nothing personally against nobody.
Right.
It's just that people have come in new to the area, and they come in like a bull in a china shop. And they come in trying to change history after all the research that people have done for years and years and years. And they just make up these stories as they go. And like Sheila said, fiction carries a whole lot faster than truth. People will repeat a fib a whole lot faster. When you put out incorrect information, I don't know why it is, but it seems like it travels faster.
It does. I remember once when I was in grade school, the teacher started at the top of the class, the front of the class, and she told this person a secret, and then they told it, and they kept, each row would tell it. And by the time it got to the end, and that last student went up and told the teacher what they had heard, it was totally different from what the teacher had stated in the beginning. And that's kind of like what happens with history. They kind of tweak it, add to it, and take away.
You don't get a 700, 800, 900 page book from making stuff up with that much documentation and photos and Civil War records. And that's what we do. Same way with this book right here with
there you go.
Righting Wrongs. That's Paul Hatfield and myself when we were in kindergarten. And there we are, the picture below when Paul and Sheila and I found the cave where Ellison McCoy had been hiding in. and it's in this book.
Mhm.
But we go through different books and talk about them and correct them and point out the things that's incorrect. That's the first book ever written by original Hatfield McCoy descendants together.
Right.
Guys, we'll see you on part 3. Part 3 is probably the best part as far as corrections, because I don't know if it's where they talked so long, but it seems like there's a whole lot more misinformation given there. So we'll see you then.
Thanks for watching, guys. We couldn't do it without you. Please like, subscribe, and share. And we'll catch you on the next one. God bless.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.